There's a scene in this book, A Heart So White by Javier Marias, where the main character, Juan, meets up with an old friend of his, this female friend slash ex-girlfriend, and ends up videotaping her vagina. Now, I've never had the personal pleasure to recontextualize past pussy, but with other people's hair and skin cells and dandruff and mucus and who knows what all other crud other people's reads contains, it's even worse for being familiar in the past. For instance, I'm reading this Updike book, and it smells like pure ass. But for me, Marias is a new writer. This character named Berta, who's having her pussy videotaped, talks about this feeling of absolute cleanness and infinite possibility before she actually meets whoever it is she's going to be dating next. And I feel the same way whenever I crack open a new writer. But just like Berta, I usually find it to be a one-night stand. Folks mention Saramago and Proust alongside Marias, and Saramago, aside from the long sentences with all the commas, I don't really see that at all. Saramago, to me, writes in a more classical mode. For me, he's actually more compelling because he folds his dialogue into the stream. Proust, maybe more so. There's that discursiveness, and also the standout thing with Marias, for me, at least with this English translation, is that the prose is just like this river of absolute honey, and you get trapped up in that rambling style and relax in this sweetening sickness.
Oh, I can taste the bubbles.
Forgetting the fact that this river is barely moving, and when it does move, it moves in these little slow circles, and the sights that you see along the way are transfigured just barely enough to trigger this deja vu. Silky smooth style and the way Marias takes his time circling around and back and forth through time has this hypnotic quality to it, but it also adds suspense. This book is essentially a mystery novel. The seed of this mystery is laid out in the last, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, in the last sentence of the first chapter. One of these magical gift from God sentences that seems to have the entire novel encompassed within it, and the rest of the novel spent trying to unpack it. Todo el mundo dijo que eras
el cuñado, el marido, mi padre. Gritaba por segunda vez.
Sentence contains a black hole that sucks you in with its mystery. So whatever took place then is the event that becomes the secret that Juan picks up on and feels that he should understand. Who, because of his occupation as a translator, which is an occupation that Marias himself also did some time in, this character Juan is essentially a hardcore auditory voyeur. This book puts forth some really great observations about the state of marriage, especially early on during that sickeningly sweet honeymoon period, that psychopathic period, and then eventually reaching that crest. I guess it's after 7 years, they say, where things start to turn and take a slide down into that inevitable boredom and staleness, and even further where the doubts and suspicions start to arise. I guess it's fitting that I'm reading Updike, the master of adultery, alongside, and the bottom rots out and you have these spikes that are staring you in the face that were possibly there all along, and those spikes, they were planted by secrets. It carries with it the residue of all the human flesh that the secret has pierced through and skewered. These shreds of human soul that cling to the secret, and it becomes like this responsibility that we carry in our mouths like bullets or arrows, and we have to know to restrain ourselves from firing, even though violence of this sort is addictive and exciting. And we have to be careful when a secret is let loose between two people who care about each other, because it can change the whole foundation of the relationship, such that it would have to be rebuilt from the ground up. Even though Marias has this rambling style where it's like he's wrenching every last bit of curiosity and patience out of you, and he's like pushing you, edging you closer and closer to the cliff, and you know that there's going to be that inevitable climax that occurs, but even when it occurs, he's still doing it to you. He's still drawing it out, and it feels like it's happening in slow motion, and you're like, what the fuck, man, come on. And the way it resolved itself was a little bit Scooby-Doo for my taste. And Juan says, even though I don't think he really believes it, essentially what takes place is identical to what doesn't take place. It's up to us either to grab onto it and absorb it, or just to let it pass by. That may be true if you look at it from the long view, where our souls are these temporarily flickering flames around the cold, hard facts and illuminating them. But once all our souls are extinguished, there's nothing left to shed light on what may have only ever been in our own minds. By the way, the cover of this novel is really interesting because it depicts this scene where, in the time frame of this novel, it takes place, I'd say, mid-20th century, but if you look into the painter of this scene and look at the details, it looks more 19th century, which is completely outside of the time frame of this novel. But this novel has these themes of circularity of events repeating themselves over time, so it kind of fits in. You know, it could be like a reoccurrence from the 19th century, and then 18th, 17th century, 16th century, 4000 BC. So if we were to scale it back down and examine an individual soul at the microscopic level, there would be maybe one or two deep, dark secrets that would completely destroy us if they were ever released. And maybe even for us to acknowledge that about ourselves would be a challenge. What would happen though if that secret were released and the burden lifted? You know, that initial wound would eventually heal up, and maybe we would become stronger and better people. You know, maybe I made this video as a platform because I didn't think anybody would get this far. So last year, you know, actually it goes even further back. Maybe it goes all the way back to when I was born. I've always had